crap. Good afternoon, friends. I'd like to welcome you to What's in Tegan's Storage Locker. It's the show that dares to ask the question, just what is in my storage locker? The answer today, well, friendo, the answer is comic books. The answer is always going to be comic books. I grab a fistful of books from around. We look through them on the camera here for, I'm hoping, your enjoyment. I put up other videos now looking at new comics. I thought those might be of interest to some people. They're called, Hey Tegan, what's in the bag? I just put them up in the same channel here. You should be able to click to them directly from here. And if you like any of what I do, check in with the Patreon. Tons of stuff there for you to download. That's how you show your appreciation. That's how you tell me you want me to continue to do more of it. So, for today, let's get started with some Hulk. Not just any Hulk. Issue 426 of The Incredible Hulk. Why is that significant? Seemingly one random issue of the Hulk from the middle of the Peter David run. Well, this just happened to be the first issue of The Incredible Hulk drawn by Mr. Liam Sharp. Technically speaking, the first full issue, because he did draw, I believe, a few pages in the previous 425, which was a double-sized issue that served both as his welcome onto the title and Gary Frank's farewell. They shifted artists at the climax of the long-running Pantheon saga. Now, if you don't know who the Pantheon is, well, if you ever read Hulk, you're going to find out, and you're going to see it's not that it's a bad idea. It's not that it's a good idea. It was just incredibly there for 3 years of the book's run. And it's kind of telling that it's a whole cast full of characters that have never really been touched, even in the Hulk. And there were plenty of characters, at least 2 or 3 characters in the Pantheon who you could have seen branching off to do something, anything else, and none of them ever did. So it wasn't, people liked the book because people like Peter David's Hulk. People like Gary Frank on the Hulk. It was a funny book at a time when that was kind of going against the grain. So, it's one of my favorite runs. But it had to come to an end. They needed to move on to other things. So issue 425 was one of the Hulk's, frequent status quo changes where can't have things too good or even just too stable for any period of time for old Bruce Banner, or, you got to blow it up. And so, the thesis of the, more or less the Gary Frank run of the character was that it was more or less the best the Hulk's life had ever been. He was integrated, all of his personality. Oh, gee, are you just going to sit there? Well, maybe we can just do this with you sitting there. All of his personalities were amalgamated, what I've been trying to get through. He was more or less at peace with Betty, developing, friendship with a number of, his long-running supporting cast. And it was all just built on multiple House of Cards. One of the House of Cards was that this Pantheon organization was kind of a front for just this really shady dude, and I'm not going to give the secret away, what all it ended up, because it was a whole thing. It wasn't really that popular, and even though it even ties into another big Marvel character, it's just not a story anyone's ever gone back and done anything with. But issue 426, well, everything was changed. Hulk's life, his safe, solid, steady, and stable life for the first time ever. It's blown up completely, literally blown up. The UFOs blew up his old headquarters, so he changed. He went from being the Hulk, who was the Hulk all the time and smart all the time, to the Hulk who was smart when he was green, but when he got angry, he turned into Bruce Banner. You're thinking, well, that doesn't sound like a very stable direction for the book. And you're right, it wasn't. It didn't last for that long. But it was, and I don't even know if they told all the story they wanted to with that version of the character, because this part of the book ended up feeling a little bit truncated for a couple of reasons. See, Follow the Pantheon, epilogue. Written by Peter David, pencils by Liam Sharp, inks by Robin Riggs. One of the reasons I think it feels truncated is because Liam Sharp doesn't last, but I want to say he is a full year, maybe not even that. He wasn't on the book. What do you... Well, I have enlisted a new weapon in the war on squirrely kitties, and that is Silver Vine. I could never get him interested in catnip before, just had no effect on him whatsoever. But I got some catnip with Silver Vine, and he quite likes that. So let's see if that can keep him occupied. All right. Still basketball cards in 94-95. So, Liam Sharp has voiced disappointment with this run. He's not happy with his work on it. He's very publicly said that he doesn't think he really rose to the occasion. And I gotta say, I loved his run on Hulk at the time. It wasn't as long as it needed to be, by half. Gary Frank was on the Hulk for a good couple of years. But what he did was nothing to be ashamed of. He just got his very first Eisner Award, so congratulations to him for that. I just absolutely adore his work. I've said before that Starhand series that he did a year and a half ago, actually. Excellent, highly recommended. My highest recommendation, just about. Especially, if you are familiar at all with Liam Sharp's work. He's also written some books, some prose. He writes his own stuff now. He's definitely grown into a significant creative talent, I think. But he started off there too. We looked at an issue of his Death's Head 2, the ongoing series, on the TikTok, like last year. Not a book we've looked at recently. But if you go back and look at like 92, 93 era Liam Sharp, yeah, you can tell he was getting a lot from Jim Lee. Trying to remember if I ever played this Adventures of Batman and Robin for the Super Nintendo. I may very well have rented that. That looks halfway familiar. That's how it was back then. You rent something for 2 or 3 days and, I think this is the sequel to that other Lethal Enforcers game we saw the other day in the ad. So what else is new? No one likes you, Dr. Sampson. Hey, Doc Sampson, you ever notice that no one ever uses you except for the Hulk? Like, you don't just show up in most other books, unless, like, Peter David is writing them. No one likes you. I don't want to hear from you. And that's something I have to say I appreciated about Immortal Hulk, that it was pretty clear in its absolute disdain for Doc Sampson as a supporting character. He's like basically the worst friend any superhero has ever had. Not even because he's double-crossing him. I mean, he basically just double-crosses him as a matter of course and says it's because he's his doctor. That's terrible. No one likes you. And that was one of the things that Al Ewing picked up on, was that he's actually kind of a despicable character when you break him down from his part of the firmament is, he's the Hulk's friend. Well, he's not really the Hulk's friend. He's kind of always a dick to the Hulk. So we got this character here, Mercy, who showed up periodically. She was never like a major player, but she showed up like, 3, 4, 5 times over the course of David's run. And she's just a strange magical entity who really is into helping people kill themselves. It's, not a fun villain topic, but like I say, this is the Hulk. Stories can get weird or maudlin or, They got the Hulk, Bruce Banner, chained to a chair in a plane. So, I don't know, oh yeah, Betty is dying here. That's what happened at the end of the Gary Frank run. Was she shot? I can't even remember if she was shot or if she was stabbed or something. It's been a while since I read it. So basically, this is her spirit that Mercy intercepts right before she dies, before she flatlines on the table. And Bruce is just consumed by, I think Ewing does it quite a bit in Immortal Hulk, where he has the Grey Hulk inhabit Banner's body. I want to say this is the first time the Hulk has actually inhabited Banner's body. Peter David is the first one to do that. So yeah, she's flatlining. He's seeing her spirit as she's dying, but he's also in these little panels down here, and I just love how this reads. This reads really well because he adopts like a whole different way of drawing these. They have sort of a cartoony or looser brush line for the smaller pictures like that. And then, this page here where he jumps out of the airplane, but he lands as the Hulk. We got a pulse. That folks, that was coming out every month. That was a pretty good time. It was a pretty good time for your $1.95 American right there. Oh yeah, and see, this is the they're just wrapping up the last bits of the Pantheon. There's this guy his name was Paris. He was just a schmuck. Not really a villain, but just not doing anyone any favors. And he basically just took over the organization, and he says, you're not welcome here anymore. Don't have anything to do with us. We don't want anything to do with you. Half the gang just left, so farewell, Bobby. That was his thing, as he called the Hulk Bobby. Because, there's always got to be that wonderful person who calls you a nickname. All right, so, and yeah, these are still letters about, they had a lot of letters. They spent a couple pages just responding to letters about the story they did about AIDS and the Hulk in issue 420. That was the death of Jim Wilson. So yeah, it was. In memoriam, Neil Posner was an editor for DC Comics who died of complications due to AIDS the week that Hulk 420 came out. Neil was a talented editor who brought many up-and-coming young creators into the field. So here is the Hulk, of all books, inserting itself into the life of the nation, so to speak. Doing a handful of issue stories around the topic of AIDS. Oh man, let's look at the length of this. Too many books. And this was 94. I want to say I should have said up front. Yeah, this was coming out at the end of 94. This was cover dated February 95. So yeah, Black Wolf. Black Wolf lasted 10 issues. Like, whoever put it on the subscription form had a mean sense of humor. And they were still making their money off of Lucky Charms. Is that a comic that should have a Lucky Charms ad, do you think? Oh, and I didn't mention, here's a joke about Hal Jordan being stuck in the mental hospital following the events of Emerald Twilight. So That's Peter David for you. All right, what else do we got going here? All right, here's something interesting. I want to say, actually, much to my own chagrin, I bought the first and second issue of this when it came out, and then I just didn't get the third for some reason. And even if I wasn't enjoying it at the time, in hindsight, I look back and I'm like, I'm never going to find that now. I could read this on the show, but I don't have the copy of the third issue. It's this weird book no one remembers. Jeph Loeb with Chris Bachalo, Art T. Bear on inks, doing a, I don't want to say it's like an updating, it's not really a reboot. It's just this sort of a story with the witching hour as a concept. It's Vertigo. You know, it's Vertigo, and so you know they did a number of series that were just sort of taking concepts and sort of doing, you know, putting them out of their familiar setting, so to speak. So I don't think this was the witches from the Witching Hour series, but I also don't think it wasn't either. It was about witches. If I'm making sense here. So it was just a new book called The Witching Hour that doesn't actually show the witches, who actually show up in the Dreaming sometimes, because all the DC horror hosts were retconned to be residents of the Dreaming, even though we see Cain and Abel most frequently. So this is two people who, all right, Chris Bachalo, you know, he definitely has experience doing Vertigo. He came up doing, you know, Vertigo stuff on Shade the Changing Man. He did Two Death series, the Two Death solo limited series by Neil Gaiman, neither of which are necessarily like absolutely essential, but they're gorgeous. And Jeph Loeb, I don't know if this is the only thing he ever did for Vertigo. I'm trying to remember. It's not necessarily unusual that he would have done something for Vertigo, but he certainly wasn't a creator who ever became, you know, renowned for anything from Vertigo. So this looks like it's just I'm trying to remember. I think at the time, this was like 99, I want to say. 2000. At the time, I think I was basically just buying things because Chris Bachalo drew them. And that got to be kind of a problem because he did it, what was it called? Was it called just Steampunk? His cliffhanger book that was just, I really like Chris Bachalo's art, but it was unreadable, absolutely unreadable. So this is with Jeph Loeb. Like I said, I don't remember at all. Maybe I just lost track, but maybe I was moving. I don't know. It's a nice looking book. It almost looks like Bachalo is, or someone, Digital Chameleon, or the colorist Grant Golish, is having fun with some computer textures here. This is sort of an intentionally, I don't know if you can see, an intentionally pixelated line there. Interesting. I have no idea what this is about. It looks nice, though. You know, Bachalo's someone I don't think he ever really fell off. He eventually grew a style that entailed fewer lines on the page, and that's definitely common for most people who aren't named George Perez. Yeah, this is nice looking. Now, I have no idea what it's about or if it's even readable, you know. It's not like Jeph Loeb doesn't have some interesting comics to his name, but then you think, well, are they interesting because he wrote them or because, you know, he worked with Tim Sale? So if you want to read Tim Sale Batman, you got to put up with this guy he's dragging along. It's a nice book. He's learned by now He's already had a run in the X-Men, I think. He was doing X-Men by the late 90s. So he's already gotten to be about as... no, I mean, he did... Pardon me. He had done regular X-Men by the late 90s, but he was doing Generation X, I think, back in like 94. He was the big get. He was the first guy who Marvel ever poached from Vertigo, which is kind of a, you know, interesting historical tidbit for you. But that was, you know, generally the direction of his career. And you see why. I mean, this is very much a typical Vertigo comic book, something, you know, supernatural, with a little bit of a horror, but this honestly looks more like less a straight horror and more just like a dark fantasy, you know, if there's a distinction here. Oh, we found the Death Note. Man, Jeph Loeb's Death Note. How's that for a pitch? This is nice, though. All of, you know, Bachalo's calling cards. He loves doing these fun design elements that he'll carry through the page. And that's something that he didn't quit doing. He, you know, go back and look at his Generation X. I don't know if I'd necessarily recommend spending too much time on the word balloons, but that is still a gorgeous run of comics. And he stays on the book for longer than you're probably remembering, too. Man, just look at this. No idea what's going on, but just look at this. Maybe, you know, if I see the third issue of this, I'll pick it up, because I know I don't have it. Because it sure looks nice. Like I say, you know, the TikTok is insatiable. Every day, I have to have a new comic to show you people. This is nice looking, though. Coloring is, you know, we're sort of getting into that. And I talked about this when I talked about the Meet the Creeper series that I did on the TikTok. How, you know, by the time you get to the late 90s, and certainly by the time you get to the aughts, coloring has really become kind of a unforced Achilles heel for the whole Vertigo line. They get stuck on this brown tip, and it ruins them. It ruins some great comics. They're colored so disconsolately for a great deal of time. And I think they just got eaten up by this conviction that there was a certain dreariness that went along with their aesthetic. And I don't necessarily think that was the case, but it became the case. You know, they started out with some excellent artists, and they provided some very indeterminate coloring for those colorists. But again, here, I mean, he's just taking Bachalo's lead. You know, this is just a lot of negative space, a lot of spotted black. This is great. This is great stuff. Going back to the witch trials, and we're doing something about witches. We're in charmed territory, folks. What was it? The book I reviewed the other day, the Somna. Excellent book. Similar territory, looks like. Witches. Each one of us knows you can't unring a bell. Next issue, book 3. If the clock ticks down to midnight as everyone arrives as the crossroads of chance, some will be saved, others won't. Well, maybe one day I'll figure out what's going on. All right, it's been a while since we've taken a trip to ye old Ultraverse. So let's give it a go. This is one of the more interesting, and I'd say even significant, Ultraverse books. It really flew under the radar. When I say this was like the 10th or 11th Ultraverse series they launched, not necessarily everyone was paying attention to the Ultraverse at this time. The Ultraverse only lasted like 3 or 4 years, all told, beginning to end. So this ended up being significant because of the creators. This was the first real, notable work from James Robinson, with pencils by Cully Hamner. Just those two names should tell you, okay, in 1993, this is would have come out in summer of 1993. Oh boy, right at the heart of the miasma. No one in summer of '93, no one was paying attention to the Ultraverse C list to see if they were going to be popping out, one of the defining talents of the second part of the decade. And yet, sure enough, James Robinson introduces himself to the world. I don't know if this was the first thing he did. I don't even know if he didn't do any work for Marvel or DC before this. But I do know this is the first book of his that I really stood up and took notice. This got a tiny bit of buzz. Like I say, no one was really paying attention. And then it just died because the whole Ultraverse died. That's all there is to it. Why did this book end? Because the Ultraverse ended. There was not a market ready to support as many Ultraverse books as they wanted to print. So I want to say, is this that looks like a Howard Chaykin cover. If I know my Howard Chaykin, and for my sins I believe I do. Are they not going to tell us? I'm betting that's Howard Chaykin. So that should tell you, just on the face of it, a little bit of the DNA in this Firearm character. What's this guy? Well, honestly, he's I'm trying to remember. I think he's a PI who's got a gun that can take down ultras. I think that was his shtick. What made it interesting was just that he was an interesting character, and the book was sort of I'm going to use this term very guardedly, but it had elements of neo-noirish stuff in the early 90s when that was just beginning to come into vogue. Well, here's some Venetian blinds in a bail bonds office to tell you where we're at. RoboCop 3 for Sega Genesis. There you go. So, Cully Hamner. By this time, I don't think Cully Hamner was Cully Hamner. But again, this is a book that served to put his name on the map with some people just to give him a year under his belt doing monthly comics, which is how you get better at drawing comics. You sit down in one place and you draw an issue of a comic book every month. And before long, you will learn how to draw a comic book, whether you want to or not. What are you doing? Someone's being a little punk. So, yeah, this was two hotshots coming up out of nowhere. James Robinson, someone who no one in America knew from anyone. And he was a character who was just kind of an older, gruff dude who sat in his house and read books and then got up and shot people for a living. He's British, and he's got this very 1993 British comic book writer monologue. It's raining, and what are you doing? It's raining in Southern California. Raining hard, too. Hard and cold. One of the things I came from England to get away from. One of the things. So it's just like I was talking about it with Claire the other day, because we were looking at a Warren Ellis comic that he wrote for the big Top Cow Marvel crossover. And basically talking about how you can look back and see there was a whole genre of comics. There was just British person comes to America and talks. And this is an attempt, an early attempt at that, actually, since this is only 1993. This is before really, Warren Ellis had done anything. This is before Starman. Keep in mind, like I said, this is 93. Starman's going to launch in 94. And then, I'm not going to say James Robinson takes off like a rocket, because Starman wasn't the kind of book that took off like a rocket. Starman was just kind of a book that impressed a lot of people. And everyone at first, I think, thought it was going to get canceled immediately. And when it didn't, it started to grow, and eventually it became one of the, like I say, one of the defining books of the late 90s. It's the book that gave us the JSA in the early 2000s, which means it's, you know, it is ultimately the path that leads us to Jeph Johns. Love it or not. Yeah, I was thinking about it. I've actually probably read most of the comics that Jeph Johns has ever written. He works with some very good artists too, but my goodness. So yeah, there's some kind of mystery here. So he's going and talking to someone about something, looking stylish. This is stylish. For 1993, this is like as cool of an hombre as you're going to find. He's still sort of dealing with the late 80s shoulder pads. But, yeah, this is a cool dude. This is a guy who's probably seen, already by 93, I think. By 93, he's already seen Reservoir Dogs in the theater. Oh, there's a shout out from Milestone. Guy's wearing a Milestone jersey. That's kind of fun. So he's just going around and talking to people. That's what detectives do. So it's a book about this guy playing a private detective in a world of superheroes. That's a great pitch. That's been the premise for a few good runs over the years. Alias, which is my favorite Brian Michael Bendis book by a country mile. I adore Alias. I think Alias is a fantastic book that only brings into sharper respect the problems with the rest of that man's writing career. But, you know, that's like 3 or 4 steps down the line from James Robinson. Because, you know, Bendis takes that British guy voice that was so prominent through the 90s, and he just sort of gives it a Cleveland accent. So here's a shootout with some Cully Hamner. Man, this is nice looking stuff. The color, you're probably thinking, well, that's some weird looking coloring, because everyone always hears about Malibu's coloring. But then you actually go back and look at the early computer coloring that Malibu was putting in their books, and it is kind of some weird looking stuff. Paul Mount's color design. And in hindsight, yeah, this is all weird greens and teals that you're not seeing a lot, then or now. Here's some, pinks, magentas. You know, you don't see magentas unless you're riding with Michael Golden. So, yeah, I think I chipped my tooth, and oh lovely, the police. This will be fun to explain. Oh, and the policeman's a lizard person. Well, there you go. Lizard person, of course. Struth. Oh, you know you're getting your money's worth in a 1993 comic when some dude says Struth. Stone the crows. So yeah, the face of comics is about to change. So you see, this isn't a bad comic. This is stylish for the time, interesting, at the cutting edge of where, comics are going. People weren't sick of the whole, mad bastard British voice yet. It was a new and fresh thing. Oh God, I forgot about this. They did a video. They did a 30-minute film in VHS format with a 32-page special edition for Firearm Zero, limited to only 30,000 copies. 30,000 copies. Limited to only 30,000 copies. Orders ship in October. Man, I wonder if that's on YouTube. That's interesting. The Valiant did that a few years ago. It's a sickness that infests any LA-based comic book company. They want to do some kind of video reel eventually. And it just brings lots of shortcomings to the fore. There's no other way to put it. Because you liked this comic. You maybe thought this was a cool comic. You enjoyed it. Maybe you'll read it again. Maybe you'll recommend it to a friend. But this doesn't necessarily, I don't know. The first movie that's faithful to the comic book, because it is the comic book. See, that's the type of thinking that made Valiant the juggernaut they are today. What begins in the live-action video ends in the full-color comic. Notice Marvel has never done that gimmick. In all these years, they've had some spin-off comics for the MCU, but they have never tried story in the comic crossover, ever. Interesting that they haven't. Maybe they know better. And the Super Nintendo joystick. All right, do we got to pander? Oh, crap, we got to pander. We have to pander, people. Okay, here's pandering for you. Spider-Man. Spider-Man. People love Spider-Man. That's right, and I got lots of Spider-Man comics. Do not worry. This is an interesting Spider-Man comic. I don't know if it's necessarily a memorable one, but look at this creative team here. Stan Lee script, John Romita pencils. This was 1996, 97. So this is, I think, probably the last Stan Lee, John Romita collaboration. Tom DeFalco plot, Dan Green inks. So you got two pros, basically, providing the firmament here. But Stan wasn't scripting a lot of comics by the late 90s. He just wasn't. And John Romita, he was still penciling the occasional comic by this. But this may have been even his swan song. Yeah. Spider-Man by Stan Lee and John Romita. And you've probably never seen it before. Spider-Man and the Kingpin with, apparently Daredevil's life on the line. Let's go. Can't beat that. So, Spider-Man catches some crooks. I don't know if these look like the crooks that are hopping around in 97, but back at the Bugle. Ooh, Zoltaro. Yes, Zoltaro. I love Zoltaro already. I want to know everything about him. I have a newspaper to run, Ben. Let Interpol worry about Zoltaro. As soon as some info turns up, we'll be sure to print it. Well, let's hope some info does turn up. Man. Dude still had it up until the very end. He knew how to draw a comic book page. Who's coloring this? This is Steve Olive coloring, Comic Wraps, John Rochelle design. Interesting for a book to have a separate credited designer at this point. Bill Oakley lettering. There's the Human Torch. Oh, and the X-Men. And whatever, Luke Cage is doing for, clothing at this point in his period of his career. A rare John Romita Rogue. A rare John Romita Storm, for that matter. He's drawn all the old gang. Can't beat it. There's the Thing. This is... obviously an old home week type story, but we all love old home week type stories. The Kingpin looking basically just like how the Kingpin always looks. He still looks like that today. Even when Bill Sienkiewicz draws him, he still basically drawing the same character. And, oh yeah, that's Foggy Nelson's mom. I remember her. I liked her. You can probably guess why I liked her. There's Daredevil. Now, you know, if you don't know, John Romita always preferred drawing Daredevil to Spider-Man, and he regretted being taken off Daredevil for Spider-Man. He was always very clear about that. He never really got to go back and, you know, finish his run on Daredevil. But he had much more of an affinity for the character. My goodness, look at this. And, you know, you can tell, because if you've seen John Romita's pencils, you know, and he penciled a very crisp and tight page. And yet Dan Green is really, really working to, no, that's what Dan Green does. He does his best to translate that mark, that pencil mark, as best as he can. And, you know, it's his strength and it's his weakness as an inker. I've said it in the past. Kind of a wild-looking Dr. Doom there. Man, this is a nice-looking comic. You know, this isn't going to break any land speed records or anything. But, you know. At the same time, this is an interesting and significant comic all the same. So him and Daredevil are racing for something, and just all the old gang. It's the Zoltaro story we should be working on. Yeah, I'd say Zoltaro sounds a lot more interesting than whatever they're doing. So some guy's pretending to be Spider-Man for criminal purposes. There's a very classic Stan setup. Very Silver Age. When's the last time they did that? Like someone just decides to start dressing like Ms. Marvel or something to do a bank robbery. I'm sure they've probably done that. Oh, man. Look at this. Daredevil versus the Kingpin. Man. Yeah, I do have new info about Zoltaro. I've been waiting to hear about Zoltaro. Neither man takes his eyes off the other. Neither man speaks as Zoltaro's money is exchanged for the Kingpin's potion. Oh, the Kingpin's got potion. Oh, it's always a good time when the Kingpin's dealing with like potions or tablets. I don't necessarily like when you got like super science machinery, like I don't necessarily cotton to that. He seems like someone who's a lot more likely to pay money for ancient artifacts. That's his kind of gullible. Give Daredevil his second shot. He will live just long enough to destroy Zoltaro for us. We will regain my bomb-proof case. Zoltaro gives money to no one. Oh, man. This book is selling me on Zoltaro. You know, when they were just like giving... Sony was just giving movies away to anyone who'd been in a Spider-Man comic like twice. Zoltaro. Right there. Boom. I want to know more about this man. You know, sometimes maybe this late 90s coloring, I think it would have been a nicer book with flat colors, just straight up. But, you know, that's not a new thing to hear from me. But frankly, flat color has been coming back, so can't complain too much. All right. Oh, man. Look at this ragged Kingpin. You see, Zoltaro, I never trusted you. Trust, I spit on your trust. I need no bomb to finish you when I can use my own 2 hands. You'll have a use of them no longer. So apparently Zoltaro's dead, because he tried to double-cross the Kingpin. However, when has being dead ever held anyone back in comics? I love this picture of the Kingpin in his ragged clothes after surviving that explosion, just walking off into the sunrise. Sometimes you win and sometimes you don't. When you're the Kingpin, you play the odds. Each new battle makes me stronger, wiser. So next time, I'll win. Gotta love it. Oh, and you get some John Romita sketchbook pages. We thought it would be fun to let all of you peek behind the curtain of creativity for a moment and catch a glimpse of a master at work. My God. So you see, if you run across this in the bins, I don't know if it's been reprinted. It's probably been reprinted, tacked onto something like a, a Central Collection or something. But this is one to look out for. Oh, because you get more Zoltaro action. Zoltaro was a bit hokey in this sketch. So in the story pages, he was less hammy and exaggerated? No, he was not. John, Jazzy Johnny, I'm sorry. Baby, Bubala, if that was your goal, you did not succeed. But what are you talking about? This guy looks great. This guy looks like he stepped out of a spaghetti western. He's fantastic. If he showed up today, he'd be the sensational character fine. So you get a text piece from Stan, possibly written by someone Stan talked to at some point, and a John Romita piece, which he probably did write. So, the Amazing Spider-Man, wanted for a heinous crime and mercilessly pursued by friend and foe alike. And in the midst of the beleaguered web spinners' mounting troubles, 2 ominous new threats rear their ugly heads in the dark side of the city. Wilson Fisk, the kingpin of crime, and the merciless gang lord Zoltaro. Man, I want to see more of this Zoltaro guy. Despite the incredible odds against him, Spider-Man must find a way to both clear his name and bring down these 2 underworld rulers. The wondrous wall crawler dare not fail, or the life of his friend. The scarlet swashbuckler known as Daredevil, victim of the Kingpin's death arrow drug, is lost. Don't miss this once-in-a-lifetime treat, reteaming Stan Lee and John Romita as they bring to life the most chilling chapter in the career of illustrated fiction's truly inimitable icon, Spider-Man. The stakes are high, the excitement higher. So I think I will almost certainly probably end up reading this on the TikTok at some point. It's been in the pile for a while, but it is a nice looking comic book. Till the day he died, John Romita never drew a bad line. Just straight up. And, when Stan actually, wrote his own words, he could still be kooky sometimes, I guess. What do we got left here? Okay, here's one we haven't done in a while. Some late 90s Superman. Not just any late 90s Superman, because lots of good people drew Superman in the late 90s. Lots of good people always draw Superman. Superman usually has good people drawing his books. But this particular good Superman book is drawn by John Bogdanove, written by Louise Simonson, accompanied, of course, by their able inker, Dennis Janke. So, this is the honeymoon. They're on their honeymoon. They just got married. So this is Superman and Lois at the outset of their relationship, and they're still married today. They tried to break them up. Didn't work. Did not work. Notice that, they tried to do the equivalent with Superman that they did with Spider-Man, and it didn't stick. People just refuse to take any pairing seriously because we all know there's only There's only one outcome that makes any sense. So now generations are used to them married. And I remember when they got married. I remember when they got engaged. It made news when they got engaged, and they had a very long engagement. But even though I think people thought at the time that the wedding was rushed because they did it in time with a television show that no one watches anymore. But the fact is, in hindsight, it was time. There was nothing else they could really do at that point because they had done too good a job, of selling them. The post-crisis period. It took them seriously as a couple. And they realized that once you didn't have the artificial conflict of her not knowing his secret identity, they've never put that genie back in the bottle. She has known who Superman was since 1990 or 1991. Just about every day since then. And it just works too good for them to want to do it, to get rid of it. It's 35 years old at this point. They tried doing other things, and it never really fit. The characters just, they work well together. They're together even all the way back in the 40s, so it's not like it's not a bedrock core of the franchise. And it's a very jaunty Lois in her vacation khakis. I know what they're doing. They're doing something or other with pirates, maybe? Where are they? They're tied up by some criminal warlord. Well, there you go. You'll regret bringing me here, Rajiv. Brave words, Mr. Kent, but talk is cheap. I guess that's Mr. Rajiv. Oh, Space Jam. I have not yet seen the second Space Jam they made. And that's a shame because the first one was actually kind of clever. The second one didn't seem to get quite the buzz. Because the first one sort of surprised people by being kind of fun and watchable. That's not what the vibe that I got from the second one. Three Dirty Dwarves. Now there's a game. Wow. For the Sega Saturn. Well, we're in 1996, so we're... Hello. Well, comics are good at comics. I mean, she's very healthy under those fatigues. What can you say? Oh, man, I did not know that we were going to be invited to the gun show this issue. My goodness. Who's doing the coloring here? Oh, they haven't told us yet. They're not telling us till the end. Glenn Whitmore coloring. Wow, yeah, see, that's Lois Lane. She knows how to take down some thugs with a quick karate kick. She's one lone woman, and she's as good as mine. Is she? So I don't remember. It's been 30 years since I read this, just about. So is he gonna just sit there and wait for her to rescue him? Oh, wow. That looks like that's exactly what she's doing. That's cool. This is great. Now, this is towards the end of their run. They were, I think, only on the book for another year or two. So they had been on the book together, and maybe even had been on the book too long, possibly by their own estimation. But man, he drew such a good Superman. Look at that. Oh, so he just, oh, so he gets injected with some, oh wait, does he not have his superpowers? Interesting, because he gets injected with some, like, pentobarbital or something, and he starts telling the truth. Is this when he had the Superman Red and Superman Blue thing going? Oh, but it's right before that, so his powers are on the fritz. Okay, that's what it is. Lois with a, looks like a Kalashnikov there. There you go. with a bandolier and a belt with full of grenades. One of the lesser seen Lois Lane variants. Nice looking book though. Yeah, you have to admit this is a nice looking comic. No, there you go, Space Jam the video game. Oh man, there was a Space Jam video game for the PlayStation. Wow, for some reason, now keep in mind I didn't have a PlayStation. I've never had a PlayStation of any kind. For some reason, I would have bet anything that Space Jam preceded the PlayStation, and yet they existed in the same world. I'll be damned. Well, you know, learn something new every day. Hello. You don't need Superman around. Lois Lane is admittedly a bit formidable in this comic book. I don't mind Lois being formidable, but my goodness. Why allowance was invented. Were kids buying baseball cards with their allowance by, I guess somewhere. I don't know. I only know what the comic books tell me, and I don't see baseball card ads in the comics anymore. Where do you learn to handle explosive like that? I've been around the SCU, of course, and I'm an Army brat. Remember? I cut my teeth on armed and unarmed combat. My dad even taught me how to throw a knife with my toes. Well, you know, that does actually make sense, since it's, established that he raised her as a tomboy. So it makes more sense than it could. So they're just on there. Do whatever it takes, but get your powers back. There you go. Nice. Well, the wedding's over, but the party's just begun. So Superman and Lois are finally hitched. Tell us what you think of the special and what you think this is going to mean for Clark and Lois in the future. All right, so do I recognize any of these names? No, I don't recognize any of these names. Remind me to thank Lucy for helping book our honeymoon, honey. Reminds the soon-to-be sharp-witted Clark to his new wife. This month's cover was done by those cut-ups, John Bogdanove, Dennis Janke, and Patrick Martin. Yeah. Next week, the honeymoon's over and the power struggle has begun. Join Superman's quest to regain his powers with a legion of superheroes. So that's Dan Jurgens, Ron Frenz, and Joe Rubinstein during Frenz's period drawing Superman in the era. Adventures of Superman with guest penciler Paul Ryan. He's doing I want to say he's doing the quarterly Superman Man of Tomorrow book by now, but he's also doing this. Carl Kiesel's writing. Carl Kiesel, he wrote that excellent Adam special that we read on the channel the other day. David McLeany, he's moved over already from Amazing Spider-Man to Action Comics with Tom Grummett and Dennis Rodier. Tom Grummett, he did a lot of Superman and a lot of Superboy. And Ron Lim, he's doing a guest issue on next month's Man of Steel. So, yeah, a murderer's row of talent in every sense of the word. Well, not every sense of the word. All right. Ooh, Dannon Sprinklin's Magic Crystals. Man, that's something. Batman Hollow series, all hologram trading cards. So, that's a fun show. That's a nice spread. Interesting books. So if you like this show, check out the Patreon. I got tons of stuff to download there. I got new shows on this channel devoted to new comics, actually. If you like me talking about new comics, it's called Hey Tegan, What's in the Bag? I tried to talk for a shorter amount of time than this show. You know, this show is for just you and me to sit and chill for a while. You go to the kitchen, maybe pour a nice rosé, check in with your old pal Tegan. Check out my daily reviews on TikTok and Instagram. Check out my podcast with Claire Napier. It's called Udder Madness. We talk about Top Cow comics. That's Mark Silvestri. That's Michael Turner. That's Witchblade. That's The Darkness. That's even Cyberforce, damn it. And what else? Oh, I got stuff on the Comics Journal. I got a new article on the Comics Journal just this week on Doofus and Rick Altergott. Fun stuff. Please have a wonderful day. Take care of yourself. Take care of the world. It is tough going out there right now. So just be kind to yourself. Be kind to the world. Be kind to small children. Be kind to animals. And just have a wonderful day.